The Necromancer from the North, the first book in the Prophesied Sorceress series, by t.m.caruana. Prologue. A long time ago, a dragon king ruled the world. He was mad and exercised his power through fear. Knowing that his kingdom, the dragon sorcerers, had only one chance of creating an egg that would hatch into an heir, he claimed the strongest sorceress in all the land to become his queen. As their spirits connected in the traditional mating ritual, the clairvoyant queen could see a potential outcome to a future where the world existed no more. As the prophecy of magic had predicted in her vision, the queen unfathomably laid 4 eggs, which had been unheard of in times gone by. The queen gathered her 4 eggs and set off from the castle into the forest to hide them away from the king. She was chased by the king's guard, and in her haste to get away from them, she lost one of her precious eggs. In the fear of losing more of her children, she sacrificed her spirit in the most powerful enchantment ever cast to forge an amulet that would have the strength to bind even the most powerful magical energy. The repercussion of her enchantment divided the world into 5 realms: the northern heavens, the southern underworld, the eastern seas, the western woodlands, and the earth. The queen's vision showed that a blood moon would call upon the 4 black dragon spirits to possess their powers and claim their host bodies. The lost 4th egg would one day grow up to become an evil sorcerer from the underworld, who would rise to earth and whose powers could only be contained by the queen's amulet. The amulet would glow red at the moment of judgment, which could only be activated by 3 mortal sacrifices, blood from the 3 other eggs' hosts' bodies, and a binding spell. The prophecy would either result in the world's doom or the extinction of the last dragon sorcerer. The exhausted queen, dying from the energy discharged when forming her spell, made 3 immortal alliances, who she entrusted to care for her eggs until the right time came when the blood moon would rise in the sky. One of the dragon sorcerer eggs was given to a goddess of the heavens, the second to a wise man in the western woods, and the third to a mermaid in the eastern seas. The queen's last words to these guardians were a whisper of hope, a hope that love would come to be the sorcerer's defeat. The future has forged a sorcerer's invincible power. It will prey on the weak, destruct the strong, and an earth devour. It's a vision seen to vanquish all from root to sky. It sees plants, animals, and humans wither and die. No more shall earth bear fruit of life, no memory of love from child, husband, or wife. But one spirit whispers of a bright light to end the gloom. A prophesied woman holds magic to stop the world's doom. It tells of a black dragon in the protector's hand, born to be destined to save Earth's land. Evil forces deter as loveless heart and an irresistible love meet. She can bind the sorcerer's power by a kiss of deceit. Chapter 1. The Rite of Familiar. "You are a very hard woman to find." I gazed up at my pretentious demi-godfather as I sat with my feet dangling off a cliff edge of Mount Sirius. I wish he would just leave me alone. "Only when I don't want to be found," I snapped. "Sora, my daughter, every child turned 21 must attend the Rite of Familiar ritual, or there won't be another blood moon in 10 years. Yes, I know. You have mentioned it a few times." Oh, child, I can't believe he still calls me a child. It really makes my blood boil. "You aren't just one of those necromancers. You are a daughter of gods. You, above all, are expected to be there. Do you know the chant?" "A child of gods? Mum is a god, yeah. You are only a demigod." I made an agitated grunt and then recited the chant to show him that I knew it. Familiar, I call upon you to rise from the spirits and guide me. Manifest in me, follow my body, and allow my eyes to see your true identity." He lifted a contented smile on his neatly groomed face, with his silver fox hair perfectly aligned next to each other. "Good," he said. "And I want to be treated like any other necromancer." I quickly retaliated to stuff his pride down the deep pockets of his long brown leather jacket. "But you aren't. I have invested too much time in your academic education and too much effort in your combat training to have you referred to as a common necromancer," he explained as he fingered his long blade hanging by the side of his leg. He spoke too as if he were practically a god by default due to Mum. I wanted to throw my disdain of his own title in his face, but was scared it would bring out his wrath. Finished lecturing me, he flexed his white and grey speckled wings and angled them aerodynamically to dive down through the layers of cloud that constantly circled the sky roof of Sirius. Even on a sunny day they still hid the mountain top, which was the reason I had thought it to be a good hiding place. It obviously wasn't. This evening the clouds were red in the light of the moon. It was a mesmerizing view. Yet I needed to leave to attend to the ceremony of the rite of familia, or my father would skin me alive. It was a challenge to stand up in my tight black leather trousers until the point where the resistance turned to a flicking assistant. I straightened my matching top along my slim body and inspected my front to ensure all the buckles over my chest were still intact. I snatched up my backpack and brought up my pocket mirror to check my makeup. My father detested the thick lines of black eyeliner and heavily applied mascara around my teal-colored eyes. My lips were painted in a dark purple within a black contour, and my skin was covered in more than enough nugget-colored foundation and powder. I tousled my carmine hair. It was a statement. My father hated my wild look. He said it didn't become a daughter of gods. That's what he called me, since the word Titan, which was the correct term for a child of a god and a demigod, was a status beneath his approval. Well, this was the look I wore. I didn't care about what others thought of me. Fuck them. Fuck everyone on Sirius. I ejected my wings from my back. One thing I did have in common with my father was that I was equally fierce and didn't hesitate to throw myself off the cliff to bolt down the sky. I trusted my wings would hold enough to break the speed when nearing the ground. I made my way to the amphitheater, where a crowd of judgmental idiots would gaze upon the gifted powers of the blood children. This was how society categorized the individual's worth. The necromancers who receive devious spirit animals have to leave for the barracks, where they will become trained war necromancers, aimed to protect a cloud against intruders from the earth or the underground. Their department is called the Guardians of our Faculty, so I call them goofs. The necromancers who received righteous spirit animals are sent to the Department of Professional Reading and Universal Development and Education. I call them the prudes. They are the academics who build our elite politicians, professors and engineers. The last group are the rare spirit necromancers, who will receive a rare animal familiar, like a griffin, Pegasus or unicorn. They are cool. Not body before brain or busybodies like the goofs and the prudes. They deal with magic that heals the soul, reincarnates humans from all realms, or that communicates with spirits. I want to become one of those. I arrived at the amphitheater. Oh shit, I hated large crowds. I took to the stone cobble stage, where 35 other necromancers aged between 21 and 30 years old were waiting. Since the blood moon only occurs every 10 years, you could be unlucky enough to have waited until you had turned 30, if you missed the rite ritual just before your 21st birthday. My birth time was this morning, this very same day of the rite ritual, and therefore the youngest anyone had ever been when receiving their spirit guide. I viewed the stand where my father and mother were sitting next to Dean, the Grand Master of Magic and Headmaster of the Prudes. Next to him sat Jessica, the worst busybody on Sirius. I hated her. She didn't particularly like me either, so I think it was fair. As this was such an important event to keep under control, so as not to scare away the familiars, there were goofs crawling everywhere. If the familiars didn't find peace to settle into the body of the blood child, there would never be another opportunity to receive another familiar. My father had his lion familiar on display in the air above his head, lying still in a controlled manner, which was my father's way of showing his authority. My mother hadn't brought out hers, but it was a brown bear. I was both curious and apprehensive to know what mine would be. As a Titan, I couldn't expect mine to be as grandiose as for the gods. My only hope was that it wouldn't be something disgusting like a fish or a slug. Please, 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 let it be something rare. As was normal for the traditional opening of the ceremony, the complete armored-covered commander of War Necromancer blew a long, low tune on an ox horn. The horn had belonged to the first commander of war gods, whose task it was to protect Sirius from the Dragon King. The short story was that he was lying injured after a month-long battle and almost defeated at the feet of the demon, and only managed to push him into the All Hallows Vale portal back to the underworld by resurrecting his ox familiar to life. Now, the horn was the only thing left of the ox, and served as the siren to bless other necromancers of their familiars as a tribute to the commander of war gods who lost his. I joined in as all the blood children started chanting. Familiar, I call upon you to rise from the spirits and guide me, manifest in me, follow my body, and allow my eyes to see your true identity. The first largely built man, who was totally inappropriately dressed in a suit for this occasion, received his spirit animal and had to dance around a bull before respect was stored as a mutual connection and the spirit settled into his soul. Cows were seen as a sophisticated animal, but a bull, for some reason, was placed in the devious category. Clearly misplaced, it was off to the barracks for the now sweaty suit boy with a torn, expensive suit. Fuck, that looked exhausting. The next one was an older woman, perhaps nearing 30, as her wrinkles had subtly started to creep up on her. Her short hair didn't help to hide it either. As she saw the rat familiar approaching, she forgot to chant, as she made a high-pitched screech. By doing so, the essence of the rat sought his way curiously towards the crowd. She had to start chanting faster and louder for the animal to return and make the link to the woman's soul. It was close that she lost her familiar, although she didn't look pleased that her familiar was a rat. Teal-colored essence started to rise as smoke from the ground where I stood. I heard a reaction from the audience. This was not normal. The spirit normally arrived through the air above us, not from the ground. It slowly ascended, dancing around my legs. I wasn't sure how to react, as I couldn't determine the animal. A young man with an innocent look in his light grey eyes, standing next to me, almost lost his focus as his tiger familiar attacked. He dodged it, just about, scraping his bare knees on the cobbles. Looking at the tiger's size and clearly visible colours, as opposed to the more transparent familiars, this necromancer would become a high-ranked war necromancer if he grew into his skin. A massive goof. But no one was watching the other children and how they were going to be getting their familiars anymore. They were fixated on the translucent teal essence that still rose along my body. I didn't know whether to stand still or run. The panic rose in my chest and my mother rose to her feet. Other spectators were watching my mother's concern and started to twist in their seats. My mother knew a lot as an immortal goddess, but had she ever witnessed the likes of the spiritual embodiment that was consuming my soul? It didn't look like it. Feeling the creature lurking inside me, I couldn't tell if it was me gaining power or it draining me. It was as if we were becoming one. A strong voice within me instructed my palm to rise up towards the sky. The spirit emerged out of my hand, and this was the first time I could ascertain its nature. The elite politicians and the head of the prudes panted in shock. My mother placed both her hands over her mouth, and her eyes were stretched wide. "Bloody hell, I'm in trouble,"